This is a Renew original recording. Hello and welcome to Believe in People, a 2-time Radio Academy Award nominated and British Podcast Award-winning series about all things addiction, recovery and stigma. My name is Matthew Butler and I'm your host, or as I like to say, your facilitator. In this episode I'm joined by Lucy, founder of Soberistas, who shared her candid story of alcohol misuse, trauma and recovery. From early days in the 1990s rave scene to motherhood and marriage, Lucy's relationship with alcohol grew increasingly destructive, potentially fueled by PTSD following a violent assault at the age of 20. Despite outward appearances of stability, her drinking led to deep emotional struggles and eventually a hospitalisation that became a wake-up call. Sobriety brought clarity, healing and a renewed sense of self. Through therapy and self-reflection, Lucy began to rebuild her life and eventually launched Soberistas, an online anonymous community designed to support women with problematic drinking habits who might not identify with traditional recovery spaces. It now connects tens of thousands of people globally. Lucy shares how sobriety transformed her parenting, relationships and identity, and why she believes community and honesty are vital to changing how we talk about alcohol and recovery. I start my conversation today with Lucy by diving straight in at the deep end and exploring where did Lucy's addiction start.
I mean, I always kind of start in the 1990s, seems sort of where, I guess when you think about your own story narrative, that's kind of where my self-destructive behaviours first kind of started to emerge, I guess, around kind of 1990. I was about 15, very much into the rave scene, lots of illegal drugs. Did start drinking around 13, never had an off switch, big binge drinker, like immediately, never sort of thought when I was little, I sort of realised now when I look back, I never thought I wouldn't be a drinker. So it was like always in my mind, as soon as you get to a certain age, you start drinking. And as soon as I got to that age and started drinking, I just drank, like had no off switch. It definitely wasn't a progressive thing. I just I was always the one at parties who people would be like put into somebody's bed, like passed out, hiding alcohol from me because I was like on the look out for more because I'd run out or whatever. And then I sort of calmed down on the drinking a bit when I was about 15, got into the rave scene. It wasn't really the thing to do in 1990 to 93, like drinking. Nobody kind of did. Just took lots of ecstasy and amphetamines and cocaine.
What do you think influenced that?
I mean, all my friends were doing it. So I was from a nice middle class background. There was no trauma. There was no sort of awful stuff that went on in my life before then. It was really normalised. I mean, I went to a very nice, a school in a nice area of town. Yeah. Everybody in my year virtually smoked. I'd say about half were doing recreational drugs. I mean, it was just rife in 1990, 91. And the music, I just really got into the music.
Yeah, I was going to say, was the cultural influences for all like the media and stuff like that? I
remember watching Happy Monday's video on the chart show, which used to be on a Saturday morning. Hallelujah. And I remember watching the video to that and I was about 14 and it was like a pivotal moment, you know, when you just kind of think I've found my thing here. This is like me. I found my tribe. And then I just was like gone for years, taking lots and lots of drugs. And then I had a baby when I was 23, calmed down on the drugs, very, very sort of intermittent after that. But alcohol just came in, really came in. And I just felt like that was okay because it was alcohol and it was acceptable
socially
and normal.
Acceptable.
And
Yeah. Do you think, I suppose, was there peer pressure growing up as a teenager? And you talked about a lot of people in your year group doing it, do you know, or was it just wanting to fit in, do you think? Or
I never felt pressured to do it. I think I was probably more of a ringleader.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to get off my head, I think. I was very rebellious. I mean, you don't know yourself at that age, do you? You don't kind of understand what the drivers are. But when I look back at it now, I would say I was probably lacking in confidence, lacking in self-esteem, but I had a very extrovert veneer. Yeah. And it kind of, I felt like I'd found, that was my identity. It just all kind of felt good, or so I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that go after you've had your baby at 23? moving into alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, I was it was very much nice bottles of wine. So expensive bottles of wine, bottle of wine, couple of beers every night, put baby to bed, just husband, me. And it felt like a sophisticated adult thing to do. We just got married. I felt like I was really grown up. I was 23. I'd been partying for like 10 years. Felt like I'd put all that to bed. And now I was, this kind of grown-up married person with a baby. So I was doing what grown-ups do, which is cook nice meals and drink nice bottles of wine. And then
very fancy.
Yeah, it was. And I was always buying nice bottles of wine, expensive bottles of wine.
Yeah.
And so
none of this cherry blossom stuff.
No. But so I never questioned it. I never thought, I never felt worried about it, except every so often, every few weeks, I would get hammered. And then there were several sort of intermittently, I don't know, maybe once every few months I would have a complete panic and think, am I an alcoholic? There's something wrong with me. I'm drinking differently to other people. Like everybody else seems to get drunk, but they know when to stop. Like they get drunk and they have a nice time. I get drunk and I throw up or I pass out and everybody has to, bundle me into a taxi or I end up being put to bed in somebody's spare bedroom because or waking up in a house that I couldn't remember getting to. And so there were alarm bells, let's say. I kind of always had this awareness that I drank differently and inverted commas to other people, which, as you get older, you realise there's loads of people who drink like that. It's just nobody really talks about it.
How did that affect your relationship? And you talked about obviously being married at quite a young age. How did your relationship with alcohol affect your marriage?
Well, I mean, quelle surprise, we got divorced when I was 27. So
wow, okay.
A very short marriage. I was married for 4 years. We were together for 6. I was very much in denial when we got divorced about my alcohol and mental health issues, I'm going to say now, which I would not have described them as then. I hated him, blamed him. It was all his fault. He did leave me for somebody else. And it was brutal, kind of him, the way he left me was very brutal. But looking back now, 22 years later, I totally see that the way I drank meant that I was very emotionally mature. I had very little compassion for myself. And so you can't really have true compassion for somebody else until I think you've found that compassion for yourself. So I was selfish. I was quite reckless and I got drunk regularly. So clearly, you look at that, it's not a great recipe for a good marriage.
No, absolutely not. And obviously being a mother whilst going through all this as well, talk me through, I guess, how that affected your ability to be a parent as well.
I mean, I think I was in denial because I was surrounded by a very close-knit group of friends who were all big drinkers and we'd all gone through the rave scene together. So we were all quite hedonistic. So we were going to festivals together, getting really drunk. We'd all go around to each other's houses, put the kids to bed, and then we'd get really drunk. Or we'd sometimes take recreational drugs. So I was immersed in this scene that cushioned me really from the reality of what was going on. But I think, in terms of, again, looking back with hindsight, how it affected my ability to be a parent, it wasn't neglect, it wasn't overt. And it wasn't, I don't think Isabel, my oldest daughter, who's now 26, it wasn't really something on her radar in terms of her knowing it was related to alcohol. She wouldn't have known Mummy is like this because of alcohol. But when I look back, the effect it had was really insidious and really damaging, actually. And I didn't realise or appreciate at all how damaging that was. And it's something I feel really passionate about now. And it was moodiness, snappiness, being tired, rushing through a bedtime story because I wanted to get downstairs and crack the wine open. Bad relationships, really low self-esteem, all of those emotional, traumatic consequences of alcohol that can be quite subtle. have a huge impact on your ability to be a good parent. And I've got another daughter who I had when I had stopped drinking, and it's been completely different. You know, my parenting has been completely different.
Of course. And I know like all children are different, but do you think there is any noticeable, I suppose, knock-on effects from your eldest daughter to your youngest daughter that you can maybe see as, I suppose, maybe they are that way because of how I was when they was younger?
It's difficult to say because Isabel's dad she's had a difficult relationship with her dad, and I know that's been hard for her. So it's difficult to say with certainty it was because of that.
Of course, yeah.
And I stopped drinking when Isabel was 12, which was a fantastic thing to do in terms of our relationship, as well as lots of other reasons.
Especially for you to navigate those teenage years as well.
It was, and it saved our relationship, and we're best friends, you know, we're really, really close, and she's got 2 children, so I'm a grandma, and I'm really close to them, and we have a fantastic relationship. So I feel enormously grateful that I came to my senses with alcohol when she was 12. I wished I'd done it when she was a bit younger, or not at all drunk, you know, when she was after she was born. But I think I managed to rescue it, and we've talked very openly about where I was at. I think she understands completely. It didn't come from a place of malice. You know, it came from a place of trauma and loneliness and very low self-worth.
Of course, yeah. And do you know, one of the things that there's all different levels of drinking, but dependency, recreationally, you know, binge drinking, where did you sort of fit in on that spectrum?
I mean, I think, you look at that, the DSM-5 scale of, you know, alcohol sort of use disorder, and on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, I think at my worst, I would say probably about an 8 or a 9. I certainly wasn't physically addicted to alcohol.
Yeah.
But I regularly drank in a way that was incredibly destructive and harmful in terms of my safety, my mental health. I was drinking about, 150 units a week when I was at my worst. So a couple of bottles of wine.
And that's incredible that didn't
know.
cause a dependency as well. Never found yourself waking up in the morning feeling like you need a drink to... No. It's interesting how it can affect people in so differently. Really.
And I do remember saying once to my sister, which we do sort of chuckle about a bit now, that the sort of naivety of it, that I remember saying to her when I was about 25, I really hope I'm never an alcoholic, because then you'd have to stop drinking forever.
What's your daughter's relationships like with alcohol after seeing your problems that you had? I know you said she was 12, but has that impacted her relationship with alcohol at all?
She's definitely got a lot more awareness.
Okay,
so she does drink, but she's a lot, totally moderate. You know, like she'll have 1 glass or maybe 2 glasses once a week, or once every couple of weeks. And she would never get drunk, you know. And her circle of friends is completely different. The social group at school was totally different.
It kind of goes back to, I guess, for yourself growing up, those peer influences, as you said, you was kind of the ringleader of it, I suppose. But even still, I think being in those environments and all bouncing off each other and encouraging each other. And I think that's, one of the things that I've talked about so much before is with children, you only really have that influence over them for a short number of years before you put them in those educational environments, and then their influences become that of the friends. Yeah. And you don't really have that parental influence as much as you'd like. Yeah. You know?
No, it was a different world that she grew up in. None of her friends smoked. Hardly any of them did drugs. Some of them drank to excess, but it was almost frowned upon as something that was a bit not really very cool. Whereas when I was at school, it was the opposite. If you worked hard at school and you had any kind of aspirations beyond getting hammered, then you were a square and you got bullied.
I found it funny how things changed so much. I had this conversation with my nephew before, and for me at school, it was always cool just to have your bag on one shoulder. Whereas now, it's cool to have them on both shoulders. If you have it on one shoulder, you're just a loser. And it's like, what? You know, the sort of differences in terms of how things change. Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. And I suppose going back to yourself and your own childhood then, I know you said there were no traumas there, but you talked about the cultural influences, you know, and pop culture onto your substance misuse. But What was your parents' relationship like with alcohol? Was that normal, for lack of a better word? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the era, I think it was entirely normal. Neither of them you would ever have said were alcoholics or had a dependency on alcohol, but they were both teachers, secondary school teachers in stressful jobs. They definitely used alcohol to unwind. I would see a massive difference in them in the summer holidays, for instance. So they'd be stressed, working, just really, really pulled out all term time. And then as soon as the holidays hit, it'd be friends round, loads of beers, sit in the garden. So I very subconsciously came to associate alcohol with letting your hair down, having a good time. That's how adults relax. Yeah. And it was always there, although when I was little, I remember it was kind of, the way that wine crept into our culture as a sort of nightly thing. That was very much the case in my family. Like when I was really little, it was a Sunday dinner treat. Like they'd get a bottle of wine with Sunday dinner. Yeah. By the time I was kind of 10, it was like a regular purchase from the supermarket. There's several bottles of wine going in the trolley, which never happened when I was like 1 or 2, 3, little. They just didn't drink like that.
That happened in my house during the pandemic. And obviously we'd maybe have a bottle of wine at the weekend or something. But because you wasn't having to come into work, I found myself every time I walked the dogs going past the corner shop, I thought, I'll just grab a bottle of wine to share with the wife tonight, and that's how we did it. Yeah. It just changed, and that's just because the circumstances had changed around us as well. So it just kind of shows that is
and it's addictive. Yes. Nobody thinks of alcohol or that kind of drinking as an addictive thing, but it is. And so if you're drinking a bottle of wine every night, you're going to start wanting a bottle of wine every night.
Exactly. And wine especially, I think there's something in there about the way alcohol is marketed, especially towards women, things like your pink gins and mum's happy hour. Our local pub has like a 2 for 1 on cocktails, at a certain time, for mum's after school. And it's like how much it's just normalised to be marketed that way. And as you said, wine as well. I'm, still working in this service even then, but for some reason in my head, wine felt a little bit classier. Yeah. So, I'm not on the lagers, I'm not on the vodkas, I'm just having a glass of wine with my meal tonight.
And then gin obviously got pushed in the same way. It's very craft gin, you call it a craft gin and it's suddenly got that like air of sophistication. It's something a bit cultured, it's a bit classy, and it
sitting
appeals
in the garden
to a whole...
it's the glass as well, it's the way it's presented, isn't it, with the fruit in it. What would you say that your worst moment was then? What was the thing that really turned the tide for you with your drinking?
Well, I mean, when in the sort of maybe 5 years leading up to me stopping drinking, there were several horrific things that happened, which I can't believe any of those singular events didn't stop me drinking, but they didn't. I somehow kept managing to say, well, it's all right, I was just having a laugh, it's okay. And the bravado, you kind of laugh it off. Yeah. And then in 2011, and I'd just finished a law degree, and I couldn't get a training contract, couldn't get a law training contract, and I was really depressed. My daughter was at her dad's, so I was on my own free night, Wednesday night or something, in this horrible job that I hated at Sheffield Hallam University. Nothing wrong with Sheffield Hallam University, but I hated the job. Yeah. And I had a bottle of wine in the house and I drank it really quickly, sort of 6 o'clock, just like walloped it back. I think probably about half an hour that drunk the whole thing. And then I thought, well, I'll just go and buy one more bottle of wine from the Tesco's up the road. And they had to buy one, get one free. So I bought 2 bottles of wine.
Would have been rude not to.
Yeah. And then thought, well, I won't drink both of them, obviously. Went home, drank both of them again very quickly, and found a litre of strong cider in the back of the fridge, which I didn't even drink cider. Somebody had left it there. Drank the whole lot. And I mean, God, I don't even want to think about how many units that is. 50 units of alcohol or something in about 3 hours. And I took the dog for a wee at the top of the drive and went for a cigarette, and I passed out and was throwing up on the street about 9:30 at night, unconscious. And somebody drove past who I knew and saw me on the pavement, and the dog, sadly passed now, Betty, bless her, was running around with the lead hanging off a collar, nobody holding the lead, running around in the road. So he stopped and called an ambulance, and then I woke up in the Sheffield's Northern General Hospital about 3 o'clock in the morning and had absolutely no idea where I was, covered in my own sick, stark lights, hospital bed, very unsympathetic nurse. And it was just utterly shameful. I was so devastated. It was just like the worst thing that had ever happened to me. And it was all that denial just went, everything, all the kind of stories I'd told myself about how I was just having a laugh and I was just, like everybody else, and it was a treat and all the rest of it just fell away.
What caused you to drink that much that night then?
I think I was just on a complete self-destruct mission. I think it was a combination of never having an off switch. I just never knew when I was drunk. I was genuinely mystified how people could have several drinks and then feel a bit drunk and say, I've had enough now, I'm going to have a cup of tea. I couldn't understand how they did that. I drank to get drunk, and I always drank to get drunk. And then it was just not being able to get a training contract. I'd spent 5 or 10,000, I think, of my own money on going back to university to do a law degree. I'd invested all this stuff in it. I was a single parent. I'd been working my butt off for like a year, working like 70 hours a week. Just got a first, nearly, just 2% short of a first.
Yeah, just give it the first. It's so close. Yeah.
So, gutting that I'd done all that to try and better myself after years of being this, poverty-stricken single parent doing crappy jobs that I hated. And then I couldn't get a training contract and I couldn't afford to pay the rest of the training, the legal training. And I just hit self-destruct. I think I was quite suicidal, really, on a sort of low, like a kind of not something that I'd openly acknowledged to myself, but I think on a subconscious level, I think I felt very defeated.
Because you mentioned, obviously, at the end of your marriage, you said that obviously there was mental health issues there as well. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and how that ties into everything as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of my life, actually, an event when I was 20 that had caused PTSD, which, again, this is like a different era now, isn't it, where we talk about mental health problems and people know, they recognise mental health problems. I had PTSD for 20 years and had no idea I had PTSD. So when I was drinking in my 20s, I was self-medicating massively for an event that happened when I was 20, where I got attacked very violently. And I mean, I look back now and I don't know how I survived it, to be honest, by an ex-boyfriend. And it scarred me enormously. I had no support. I had to live in hiding for a while so he couldn't find me. I eventually moved to London to get away from him because I was so terrified of him. And I never got any support for it. I never talked about it to a professional therapist. I just sort of swept it under the carpet and thought, well, these things happen. It was my fault. I shouldn't have gone out with somebody who was like that. And I put myself in that situation, so I've just got to deal with it.
But I think talking about the alcoholism, now you've shared that story, everything else, I'm not saying that's the reason for it, but everything else suddenly makes a little bit more sense now you shared that part of the story.
I'd been drinking sort of destructively from 13. So that, I'd already got an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. That was like the straw that broke the camel. That pushed me into a different kind of drinking and I didn't understand it. And then I remember being about 40 and watching a documentary about PTSD. I mean, 40, I'd been sober for 5 years. And it was... I felt like I was quite self-aware and I'd done a lot of personal development work. I'd had therapy. I felt like I was in a really good place. And I watched this documentary and I just broke down completely and thought, shit, I've got PTSD. I didn't even know. And I thought if you did have anything like that happen, you might have PTSD for a year or a couple of years. I didn't know you could have PTSD for 20 years. Without knowing it. And I went to see a EMDR therapist, sort of Googled EMDR therapists, and amazingly there was one who lived about 2 minutes up the road from me, and she was absolutely fantastic. And I had about 10 EMDR, which is eye movement desensitisation and reprogramming therapy for trauma, for unprocessed trauma, and it was life-changing. It was completely life-changing.
Tell me a little bit more about what that process entails, though.
I mean, the theory behind it is that PTSD is caused by events that are so traumatic, our brain can't process them. And so it remains live trauma. So you have flashbacks, you have nightmares, you break out in sweats. You know, if something reminds you of something, or you saw that person who did something to you, you know, like I saw that person who attacked me several times afterwards.
What was that like when you saw him?
I mean, bizarre really, because he died about 10 years ago of cancer. So the last time I saw him, he looked like a 70-year-old man, and he would be my age now. He was 49 last time I saw him, and he looked about 75. And he was a big, scary man when I went out with him. And he'd sort of shrunk into this like ill little old man because of his illness. So it was a very weird thing when I saw him, because I'd lived in fear of him for so long, and then I just saw this kind of shell of a man. And yeah, but it still evoked that complete trauma in me, and I couldn't understand why so many years later I was in such a state when I saw him, you know, that things that reminded me of him would just put me in this state of a panic attack, you know, full-on panic attack. So EMDR, through weird, it's like a little machine that you sit in front of with a light on it, and the therapist guides you through the memory of, you start off with a specific memory point of that event, and then whilst you're thinking about that, you let your mind sort of go free thinking about that event and where it takes you, and you follow the light on this machine in front of you. And then the therapist tells you to stop and asks you, where are you now? So you don't have to say, you can just acknowledge in your own mind, and then she starts it again, and then you keep going, and you keep doing that until you get to a positive end of the sequence of events. And so she sort of helped me process it, I suppose. You're reliving it.
Yeah. I imagine that's quite difficult to do.
It was really difficult.
Yeah.
It was the first time I'd ever spoken to anybody about what actually happened. It's the first time I've told anybody the actual detail of what happened, and it was really, really difficult. But about 6 weeks after I started doing it, I remember walking out and just feeling like this enormous weight had been lifted off my shoulders, just a complete freedom of mind that I didn't realise I'd not had for 20 years, so 25 years.
Your husband wouldn't have knew about it either, would he?
He knew it had happened, but he didn't know
maybe.
I don't think anybody knew the extent to how much it had affected me, and certainly the drinking. I couldn't be in a house on my own because that ex-boyfriend had climbed up a drain pipe, broken into the house I was in, and attacked me while I was asleep in bed. So I could not be in a house on my own.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
And I used to drink 2 bottles of wine just if my husband went out.
That's what I'm thinking. Is it to sleep, basically?
Yeah, to sleep, or to
like
cope with being in a house on my own.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. But again, going back to the sort of different climate we live in today, I never thought, hang on a minute, this is a bit, it's not okay to just be that terrified sitting in a house on your own that you have to drink 2 bottles of wine just to cope with that at 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday night. That's not that scary to most people, but to me it was terrifying.
It's always like, we always talk about trauma being subjective, and what is traumatic to one person may not be to somebody else, or someone could share a story to me of, a trauma, and I could think, well, that's not that bad, for instance, but it's hard to say unless you're that person that's experienced that yourself, because of the emotions that the trauma has brought as well. So there's all those things that come into it. But as soon as you've mentioned that assault, everything else that we discussed so far suddenly in my head, boom, made sense. It felt like I'd just put the middle piece of a jigsaw. Can you remember Catchphrase, the TV show? It was like the last piece had come up, and now I get the picture. So it kind of brings everything together. Talk to me a little bit about Soberistas then, and this project that you are leading at the helm of.
Yep.
How it came to be and what it does.
Okay, so after all of that, I stopped drinking instantly. So woke up in the hospital, that was it. Me and alcohol, done. 22 years of drinking. I knew that was it. And it was hard, you know. I wasn't physically addicted to alcohol, but I had obviously used it to deal with all of that stuff and socialising and everything else. And so living without alcohol for the first year and a half was really, really hard. You know, I had to learn all social skills, emotional resilience, going through loads of therapy as well, you know, just kind of life in the raw, and it was hard. And as the sort of months went by, I kind of became more, I suppose I had a realisation that, or a suspicion that there must be a lot of people like me who were not physically addicted to alcohol, but had been using it in a really destructive way, and who had a very shameful kind of relationship with it. I was really ashamed of my relationship with drinking. And I knew I would not have gone to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was too ashamed. I was a single parent. I couldn't have really gone to meetings for 90 days. No way. I couldn't have gone out of the house for 90 days.
Ethos wouldn't have maybe resonated with you anyway. You probably wouldn't have found yourself amongst peers in that environment, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I did go to Sheffield Alcohol Support Service, which is now defunct, I think. But I remember walking in there and there were posters on the wall for needle exchange. The people who ran it were people who'd been on the street and who'd kind of lost everything. And I felt like a fraud.
Yeah.
I totally felt like a fraud. And I just thought, I haven't had a problem. I've been drinking, you know, 1 or 2 bottles of Chardonnay every night. I don't belong here. And it didn't resonate enough for me to stick with it. So I felt very alone I felt like there were alcoholics, in inverted commas, on one side, responsible drinkers, very much in inverted commas, on the other side, and then me in the middle as the only person in the world who'd had this awful relationship with alcohol. But slowly I kind of thought, that can't be true. It just can't be true. There must be other people like me. So I started writing a blog. I had about 800 followers on the blog. And then I had this idea where I thought, what if we turn that blog into a space online, a safe space where people can write completely confidentially, anonymously, and just offload their shame in a nice environment where other people know how they feel and aren't going to judge them. And that was it, really. That was the sort of starting point. The only other things that were important to me, I think, in the initial thinking about Soberistas was it was for women, women who sort of had lived a similar story to mine, I guess, and that it should be totally aspirational, the idea of sobriety, rather than it being, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic, I've got to live the rest of my life, can't drink, this is terrible, you know, sort of self-flagellation. That I really felt like, after about a year and a half of not drinking, that I felt this is actually a gift, what I've done. Stopping drinking was a gift. It was positive. It was amazing. And I kind of wanted the site I created to represent that. I wanted people to feel inspired to be sober, not to be beating themselves up for having had a drink problem. So we just I launched it with my ex-boyfriend, who helped me with the tech side of things, because I'm not very techie. And we had about, I don't know, 20, 30 people on the first night just logged on, and it was good. A bit like,
what do we do?
Yeah, and then within a year, 20,000 people joined.
It's incredible.
And it was like just tapped into this massive group of people who had felt unseen, unheard, unvalidated, who hadn't wanted to go and get help in real life, who just sort of all gravitated towards the site.
Because it really is, and you know, you've written before about it being that grey area of drinking, alcohol dependency, you know, recreationally having a drink, and then that complex space where someone may not identify as an alcoholic yet struggles to moderate their drinking as well. Why do you think that as a concept, you know, you talked about, you know, the 20,000, 30,000 people. Why do you think that concept resonates so deeply, particularly with women, and how has that shaped the ethos of Soberistas?
I think the first part of your question, I think because we live in a culture that is very hypocritical about alcohol, so we are constantly dealing with this this sort of dual representation of alcohol. So on the one hand, it's celebrated even to the point of excess, films like The Hangover.
Yeah.
Just watching Netflix sometimes, you watch these series and the characters are attractive and successful and they've got beautiful skin and then they're knocking back these massive glasses of wine and there's never the negative consequences. It's always dressed up in this very positive, glamorous way.
Yeah.
So you're kind of constantly dealing with that. And then that's at odds with your relationship with drinking, because your relationship with drinking is sort of terrible anxiety at 3 o'clock in the morning, weight gain, bloated face, hating yourself, going through your phone the next morning, seeing who you've texted. Those two things are just totally at odds with each other. So you end up thinking, it's just me, it's my fault. Everybody else is doing it right. Everyone else is drinking in a way that's, they've figured it out.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with me because I can't do that. Because everywhere we look, we're seeing this positive, glamorous story around alcohol. So for that reason, I think an enormous amount of people just internalize it. They just keep plugging away at trying to fix their relationship with alcohol. I'm just not doing it right. I need to learn to moderate. I need to drink water in between my drinks of alcohol or whatever. And it doesn't work because it isn't them, it's the substance.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I think you get this sort of, shameful situation, this reason why people find it so difficult to go and ask for help or talk about it in an honest way.
And I think, with that in itself, you're absolutely right, because, the service that we have here, yes, there are people here that are, struggling with alcohol dependency, drug dependency. We offer a methadone program here for people. But if you're someone like yourself with a binge drinking problem, where you are struggling to moderate, you're going to come to this building, sit down and be like, hang on, this isn't for me because I'm not to that extent. And even some of the characters that will get that, maybe hang around the building, you could walk up for your first appointment, see some of our service users stood outside the building and think, actually, I'm not that bad, because you're not at that point yet or currently as well. I always think yet is the interesting point. So it's really hard to target people when we are just talking about moderation, because I think people suddenly think that we are just dependency as a service. And it's quite a grey area to navigate. And obviously it sounds like something that you've struggled with to navigate yourself
and
as
I
well.
think if we were more honest as a society about, and we talked about alcohol use disorder and the spectrum of alcohol use disorder, it would be really helpful, because I think it's very difficult to identify that problem until all the wheels have fallen off and you can't lie about it to yourself anymore. When you're really far down the line, then you can kind of say, yeah, I've got a problem with alcohol. There's a long way to go before you get to that point.
Prevention, isn't it? I
where
guess
you can stay in denial, but it's still having a really detrimental effect on your life. And that's now on Soberistas, that is what I see all the time in our blogs, in the chat rooms, the forums. They're functioning really well. Their lives are still together. They've still got jobs, they've still got a house, they've still got the kids, but they're drinking 1, 2, 3 bottles of wine a night, and their mental health is abysmal. They hate themselves. They're depressed, they're anxious, they're overweight, they're stuck in this trap and they can't get out, but they don't feel like they can go to rehab or Alcoholics Anonymous because they've still got a really nice life on the surface.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about the Soberistas project is that you started it in 2012. This was at a time when online sober communities were virtually non-existent. Even talking about it now, I still think we're quite far off as services looking at this as a spectrum of disorder. So, going back 13 years ago, even further behind with that. But you've weathered the digital changes that has happened in that time, in the last 13 years, the social shifts, the pandemic. So 13 years on, what has surprised you most about the way that people use the platform in which you have given them?
It's it's a very positive answer. I would say because we have been through a lot of changes, like you say, especially the digital kind of, I think there's been a massive explosion of like sober influencers and all sorts of like online communities, which just like you say, didn't exist. But what really always stands out to me is our community and love on Soberistas. It is the nicest place, I think, on the internet. I go on there.
And the internet is a horrible place.
Well, it can be, can't it? Yeah, and especially
horrible.
sort of social media. But, you know, it is, without exception almost, so unbelievably kind, supportive, and our members just kind of rally around new people who come on, anybody who's going through struggles. We've got, I mean, just unbelievable acts of kindness and bonding, people who've flown across to America with people they've never met before and gone on like a 2-week tour of America, staying in other Soberistas' houses, like best friends. They've only met online, you know, women in their 50s and 60s. These huge acts of bravery after they've stopped drinking, they just want to start living their life and embrace, you know, adventure, and they're just so lovely and kind. So the community is what I think makes us stand apart. It is a very sort of close-knit, friendly, supportive place that has managed to keep its ethos all the way through.
Yeah. Because life changes so much with sobriety. I think one of the things that I often hear is people worry about being seen as being boring because they don't drink. Maybe they're not going to get invited to parties anymore because they don't drink. How did your life change positively with sobriety?
Just knowing who I am, I think, being authentic and understanding myself. So realising I was a bit of an introvert, that I really like my own company, that I really don't want to go to any parties.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I don't actually want to go to these parties. Yeah.
I'm much happier in my pyjamas at like 8:30 on a Saturday night watching something on TV and just, you know, having a Horlicks. But, you know, the how it's kind of changed me, I think, is it's the confidence, knowing who I am, knowing what makes me happy, and knowing how to look after myself, and having enough self-compassion to do the things that make me happy, make time for the things that make me happy, and to value things, you know, to sort of really celebrate the things that are actually meaningful in life, instead of always chasing, well, you know, what you think you're getting when you're drinking, the fun, the excitement, the adventure, the naughtiness, you know, letting go of all of that and actually seeing what's real and being very grounded in what's real.
Because you said, obviously, you've got such a good relationship with your daughter. Like, how did sobriety positively impact other relationships as well?
Again, just in my self-compassion. If you know, I think when you're sober, you start to respect yourself again, don't you? You know, when you're drinking like I used to drink 3-4 times a week, I was waking up full of self-hatred to the point where I could hardly look at myself in the mirror. If you hate yourself on that kind of visceral level, there's no way you can have a positive relationship with somebody else. So self-respect, self-compassion means you can give an awful lot more to the person you're in a relationship with, and you can have a much more meaningful connection with those people because you're present and you like yourself.
What's your relationship like with your eldest daughter's father now? Do you talk to each other at all? Or?
No, he decided to detach himself from Isabel, my oldest daughter, completely, and walked out of her life several years ago. So she has no relationship with him, and I haven't had a relationship with him at all for a good 10 years.
I didn't know if I was thinking about maybe how he views you now, do you know, obviously being so different 22 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We had nothing, it was a very acrimonious divorce, and we've never had anything to do with each other. We were very separate parents in terms of bringing Isabel up after we got divorced, and then he's moved away.
Fair. Connection. Talking about community, talking about connection. Connection is clearly a core value of Soberistas. You know, from the Zoom groups, the real life meetups that you do, in a world that I think is increasingly digital, especially now more so than it was, 13 years ago. What do you think the unique challenges and opportunities for maintaining those genuine peer-to-peer connections in those online sobriety spaces?
Well, real life meetups, I think, intermittently to really fuel that sense of community is imperative. So we've got in May, we've got one of our amazing members, Dave Ladd is his username, who is walking from Blackpool, where he lives, to Sheffield, where I live, walking the whole way to raise money for us. Soberistas is a charity now, so he's doing that to raise money for Soberistas. When he gets to Sheffield, there's about 40 or 50 Soberistas members who are all coming up to Sheffield for the weekend. We've got a meal planned together. We're going for a yoga class. We're going for a trip to Chatsworth, this nice stately home. So a whole weekend of kind of lovely activities with each other to really bond and kind of reinforce that connection. Yeah. So a lot more of that. And I think it's really, really important now, especially with AI. I think it's just such a kind of, that's the thing that's going to be the big challenge, I think, as AI increases in its, cleverness. The only thing that we've got that AI can't replicate is that human connection. So it's really important to kind of reinforce that in real life, I think. So that's our sort of one of our massive priorities now.
And I can see that completely. The face-to-face connection as well is such an important part. And I think obviously being around like-minded people. You talked earlier about when you was younger about finding your tribe, and obviously that you thought the pop culture influences was exactly that, find your tribe. But how does that translate now to Soberistas now in terms of finding your tribe? Does it feel like, how would you compare the finding of the tribe now to what you thought it was, I guess?
Well, it's deeper, and it's, I think when you're younger, your tribe is quite surface level, isn't it? It's about sort of having a laugh, the music you like, the clothes you wear, what you look like. You're quite superficial, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think now the connections that I see amongst our members, the connection comes from pain, really, emotional pain. The connection comes from being human and recognising in themselves, underneath the ego, that we're all the same. Yeah. We've all been through the same kind of pain, the same kind of struggles. We've overcome the same kind of struggles. That creates this connection, the tribe, the feeling of belonging to each other. That's almost like family. That is, we meet up in real life, and you feel like these are kind of sisters almost, because you've been through those very painful experiences. It's a much deeper sense of belonging,
absolutely,
I think.
And if you could speak to someone listening to this who does fall into that grey area, maybe not alcohol dependent, not able to moderate, who's just quietly questioning their drinking but maybe hasn't told anybody, what would you want them to know?
That when you remove alcohol, you become a completely different person. So I truly believe we've all got hidden reserves of strength, love and wisdom and resilience that we have no idea about when we drink all the time. And when you take the alcohol away, they all come out. And you realise all the things you were using alcohol for, to try and deal with the void you were trying to fill, the person you were trying to become, it was all there. You just were pushing it down with alcohol. So it's kind of a leap of faith, I guess, that you trust that you take away the alcohol, guaranteed you will become a person that you really like, that you can rely on, that will give you a good life. But you can't see that person while you're drinking, so you have to kind of trust that that person is there and will emerge at some point in the future, because they always do.
Thank you, Lucy. I'd like to finish these podcasts with a series of questions unrelated to what we spoke about so far, but before I do, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or share? Brilliant. My first question is, what is your favourite word?
Oh. Discombobulated.
Nice. Least favourite word?
Oh gosh. Maybe babe.
Babe. Oh, yeah, I can see that. Tell me something that excites you.
Going to the gym.
Nice.
These days, yeah.
The hardest part is getting there for me. Once I'm there, I enjoy it. But
I love the gym, yeah. Boxing.
Yeah. Tell me what doesn't excite you.
Hangovers.
What sound or noise do you love?
Music. House music.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Gosh. I guess an incessant dog bark.
Nothing worse than just hearing the neighbour's dog going and going. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I mean, it's kind of along the same lines, but like a psychotherapist, I suppose, something in mental health, I think.
What profession would you not like to do?
Any of the ones that I used to do before I set Soberistas
at Sheffield Hallam University. And then lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You've done all right, kid.
There you go. Lucy, thank you so much for joining me on Believe in People.
Thank you very much for having me.
And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Believe in People podcast, we'd love for you to share it with others who might find it meaningful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leaving a review will help us reach more people and continue challenging stigma around addiction and recovery. For additional resources, insights and updates, explore the links in this episode description. And to learn more about our mission and hear more incredible stories, you can visit us directly at believeinpeoplepodcast.com.